The official story is that Ariana Grande caught COVID and Cynthia Erivo lost her voice. That is the safe, PR-approved narrative currently running on every major network. But the reality of what just happened to the Wicked Part 2 press tour is much darker, much more dangerous, and involves a financial gamble so massive that Universal Pictures arguably had no choice but to pull the plug. If you think this is just about a few missed talk show appearances, you are missing the bigger picture entirely. We need to answer 3 core questions the title sets up. First, what actually happened in Singapore that terrified the cast enough to change security protocols globally? Second, why do the timelines of these sudden illnesses look incredibly suspicious when you map them against the film's tracking numbers? And third, how is a convicted stalker, an alleged star feud, and a viral cringe narrative threatening to derail the biggest opening weekend of 2025? We've pulled the court records, analyzed the body language from the silent red carpets, and even mapped out the exact financial losses from the canceled media buys to give you the real story. Let's look at the timeline because the cracks in the magic started showing way before the COVID announcement. But we have to start with the most visceral shock. The common belief is that this press tour was a victory lap. Part 1 broke records last year, and Part 2 was tracking for a massive $180 million opening. Everyone expected a polished, perfect parade of pink and green gowns. Instead, we got chaos, starting with a frightening security failure. On Thursday, November 20th, Ariana Grande posted an Instagram story with the photo from The Tonight Show captioned, "Moments before COVID." This single post shut down the entire North American press leg. No Kelly Clarkson show, no Q&A, no final push. But if you look at what happened just 4 days prior, this sudden exit starts to look less like bad luck and more like a strategic retreat from a high liability situation. To understand why the studio might be hitting the panic button, we have to go back to the Singapore premiere on November 13th. This is the story the shiny American talk shows are glossing over and Universal is trying to bury. The cast was walking the yellow carpet at Universal Studios Singapore. It was supposed to be a safe, controlled corporate event. It wasn't. A 26-year-old Australian man named Johnson Wen, who quickly earned the unfortunate moniker Pyjama Man, didn't just show up. He breached the barricade that was supposed to protect the stars. This man, a known stage crasher, didn't just scream a name, he physically rushed Ariana Grande. The video footage that circulated briefly before being heavily scrubbed shows the sheer terror on Ariana's face as this man grabs her shoulders. This wasn't a hug or an enthusiastic fan reaching out. This was an ambush. And who had to step in? Not a dedicated bodyguard. Per multiple eyewitness accounts and video evidence, it was Cynthia Erivo. The woman playing the Wicked Witch had to physically shield her co-star Grande because the multi-million-dollar security perimeter had catastrophically failed. Johnson Wen was eventually arrested, charged with being a public nuisance, and was sentenced to 9 days in jail. But the damage was done long before the judge handed down that sentence. When your $100 million asset is physically grabbed by a convicted stalker, a term that an entertainment lawyer would use, the legal liability shifts immediately. Universal's insurance and security teams would have been in absolute meltdown mode. How could they guarantee the safety of their 2 lead actors, the entire financial linchpin of this project, after such a public, physical failure? You don't just keep going, you reassess everything. Per sources close to the production team, the entire security protocol for the remaining US and European dates were thrown into question immediately after the Singapore incident. The fact is, the illness cancellations that followed might be medically confirmed, but they are a profoundly convenient legal shield. They removed the stars from exposed public environments immediately after a major, highly visible security breach that could have led to a career-ending injury or worse. The panic was real, but it wasn't just medical panic. It was panic over corporate liability. But if you think a random fan attack is scary, wait until you hear about the internal drama and the strategic silence that was implemented to cover up a brewing disaster. Physical danger is only half the problem Universal was facing on the road. The other half is the cringe factor. And this is where the PR strategy gets really interesting, and where the alleged illnesses feel most tactical. The early momentum of the tour, with Ariana Grande wearing pink and Cynthia Erivo wearing green, was supposed to be cute. But online, a different narrative was building, especially after the first European stops. Viewers were finding the constant, highly emotional speeches and the intense focus on the art to be a little much. A wave of content emerged online with titles like Why the Wicked Press Tour is Failing and Viral Cringe, Ariana and Cynthia's Awkward Red Carpet. This was a brand problem, not a security problem, but it was just as dangerous to the box office. Then suddenly on November 17th at the New York City premiere, the biggest night of the tour and a critical media opportunity, Cynthia Erivo lost her voice. Think about the optics of that moment. The two biggest stars in the world show up to their own massive, highly anticipated premiere and do nothing. No interviews, no sound bites, just posing and waving. Universal released a statement saying Cynthia was not feeling well, and Ariana skipped interviews in solidarity. It was a silent red carpet. This silence did not happen in a vacuum. A Hollywood PR strategist will tell you that the absolute fastest way to stop a narrative, whether it's about cringe or, crucially, whether it's about a rumored feud between your two leads, is simply to cut off the supply of content. If the stars aren't talking, they can't be edited into a viral meme. The timing of this is critical because just days later came the major COVID announcement. Per Variety on November 21st, the cancellations included major stops like The Kelly Clarkson Show and Good Morning America. These are high-value, guaranteed publicity slots. The studio was willing to forfeit hundreds of thousands of dollars in promotional value simply to stop the conversation. By claiming illness, they instantaneously generated massive amounts of sympathy, the get well soon narrative, instead of facing continued ridicule or, even worse, having an awkward moment turn into a screaming headline about Cynthia being exhausted or the two stars not getting along. This strategic silence bought them time, cleaned up the brand image, and set a hard stop on any further viral toxicity, all before a single ticket was scanned. This isn't just about rest. It's about a $180 million gamble. And that brings us to the core financial motivation. This is the ultimate payout. Why does all of this drama, the stalker, and the alleged cringe matter so much? Because of the $180 million on the table, which is the conservative estimate for the opening weekend. Wicked Part 2 is not just a movie. It is a critical fiscal quarter for Comcast, Universal's parent company. They can't afford a Don't Worry Darling style drama cycle where the off-screen gossip overshadows the film itself. They need pure, positive energy right up until opening day. Part 1 last year made over $112 million. Part 2 is expected to significantly outperform that, putting enormous pressure on every single public appearance. A PR crisis costs money. A PR strategist analyzing the situation would have identified that every single minute of bad press, every awkward viral clip, chips away at the goodwill needed to motivate ticket sales. The fact that the entire press tour was shut down tells you exactly how high the internal alarm bells were ringing. They were willing to forfeit those high-value interviews because the risk of the stars saying something off script or the security failing again was simply too high. When you have an asset this valuable, estimated to rake in over $400 million globally in its first weeks, you protect it at all costs. The COVID diagnosis was the ultimate escape hatch, a universally understood and sympathetic reason to shut down a runaway train before it derailed the profits. Beyond the immediate crisis management, we also have to look at the internal battles that were happening even before the tour started. The entire production was under immense pressure, and one key player was trying to hold the line: director John M. Chu. Chu, who had been praised for his vision on Part 1, fought hard to protect the movie's artistic integrity from the corporate marketing machine. We heard stories and, per industry insiders, confirmed that Chu fought the studio tooth and nail to prevent certain key emotional moments, including the final whisper between the two leads, from being used in the trailers. He understood that overexposure and cheapening the magic with constant PR and marketing blitzes would dilute the final product. The fact that the press tour became so chaotic so quickly suggests that the corporate marketing team ultimately steamrolled his concerns about oversaturation. When the press tour started generating bad buzz and physical danger, it essentially proved the director's fears correct. The studio's only recourse then was to kill the messenger, the press tour itself, to protect the movie. The decision to pull the plug wasn't just about protecting Ariana and Cynthia. It was about saving John M. Chu's movie from the very machine that was supposed to be promoting it. And finally, we have to consider the paperwork behind the people. This kind of sudden, coordinated shutdown always suggests legal planning. Both Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, given their massive careers, would have incredibly detailed contract clauses outlining their specific press obligations. Sources suggest that Ariana's team in particular always includes a force majeure clause with extremely broad language around illness, security, and exhaustion.
This means that once the security breach happened in Singapore and the threat of the cringe narrative started, the star's legal teams could have immediately invoked those clauses to legally exit the remaining commitments without penalty. The COVID announcement simply provided the perfect, indisputable justification. It made the legal exit look like a health crisis, which it may have been, but it also made it mandatory, convenient, and legally airtight. This playbook is used time and time again in Hollywood to control the narrative of massive franchises when they start to break down. The unique blend of security failure, financial pressure, and brand burnout created a perfect storm. The expectation was a grand, seamless victory lap for the biggest movie of the year. The reality was a dangerous, awkward, and messy situation that forced Universal Pictures into an incredibly costly decision to protect their brand and their box office. They traded exposure for control. The $180 million question is now whether that strategic silence was enough to salvage the opening weekend. The answer lies not in Ariana's recovery, but in the final numbers reported next week. If you are interested in how this high-stakes Hollywood playbook works and want to see how other massive franchises have managed crises exactly like this, including which major sequel had the most brutal behind-the-scenes meltdown this year, then you need to check out our Fresh Celebrity Tea playlist, linked right here. It is the essential next step to understanding the full playbook.